What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I'm your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, my guest is the very talented Jackson Ridd. Jackson is a mentalist and a magician. Now, the reason why I thought he was perfect for this week's edition of the 5 weeks of Halloween, which this would be installment number 2, is Jackson is one of those people that he personifies the aura, if you will. And the aura that I'm referring to is obviously of the spooky season, but for me, and I don't know what it was like for everybody else around the country, or around the world for that matter, if they celebrate Halloween wherever you're watching this at. But for me, whenever it was Halloween time, there would always be specials on centered around magicians, whether it be David Copperfield was big at that time, or the Masked Magician, who, for the life of me, I cannot think of the name of the series because it's been that long, but it was like magic's biggest secrets unveiled or revealed or whatever. That would be always on the stations back then, because again, back then it was like 30 stations was a big deal where I lived. And people forget that, like, we didn't have 24/7 TV. TV used to go off at one point in time, and this is the time frame that I'm talking about. After midnight, there was nothing on. But anyway, that's neither here or there. But the point is that there would always be some kind of special on centered around magic. And so when I think of Halloween, I think of magic. So I thought, what better way than to have Jackson on and talk about him and his career as a magician and a mentalist. And man, it was a really good conversation. I really enjoy this one, and I think you will as well. But before we get to my sponsors, I just want to remind you to go to my Patreon. It is www.patreon.com/theroseshowpod. Now, I want you to subscribe for free for multiple reasons, but mainly because I'm going to be doing some more giveaways all through the Patreon account. That's coming very soon. There's going to be a bonus episode that's going to be dropping very, very soon. So definitely be there for that. And not only that, I am going to, after the start of the year, I'm going to stop posting so much on social media accounts when the show starts up in 2025. Because I am so fucking tired of dealing with algorithms. It's not even funny. And, so I'm going to be mainly posting from the Patreon account, next year at some point. Like I said, when the show starts back up in 2025, I'm definitely going to be posting more and more on the Patreon account, just because it's the easiest way I can connect with everyone. I know not everybody's on Patreon, but hey, it's free to sign in. You don't have to spend a dime to sign up to my Patreon account. So go there, make sure you log in, and wherever you're watching this on, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, if you're listening on Amazon Music, wherever, be sure to like and subscribe to the account so you can get all the notifications the second anything comes up. And not only that, it helps the show. So every single time you do, it might seem minuscule to you when you hit that subscribe button, but it means the world to me and helps me get that much closer to making this show that much bigger. So enough of my babbling. I hope everybody enjoys this episode. But before we get to it, here is a word from my sponsors. Check it out, y'all. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Jay, and I'm here to tell you about my sponsor, W Energy. Now, what is W Energy? Well, I'm going to tell you because I myself use W Energy. Here I've got this Calio cream. It's got a great flavor to it, and not only that, it is clean energy. Energy that's not going to make you crash, not give you the jitters. I've been looking for a reason to drop all my old energy drinks that were unhealthy for me. Too much additives, too much trash in it, too much stuff that's going to make you crash, make you fall asleep at the end of the day. Not W. So how can you get your hands on some W to try? I'm going to tell you how. And I'm going to tell you how to save some money while you do it. Go to www.w.gg and at checkout, type in my new promo code, and it is Who Else? That's right. The promo code at www.w.gg is Who Else? Because, hey, who else but me, your boy Jay? I wouldn't steer you wrong, right? And when you do, make sure you tag your boy. Let me know you got some, you tried it, and I know you're going to love it. All right, everybody, it's time to stop and let you know about today's sponsor of the show, Crazy Martin's in Piqua, Ohio, one of my favorite places in the entire world to go to. Crazy Martins has provided their customers with quality products for over 20 years, from ashtrays to water pipes and everything in between. Stop in, check out their selection, and of course, check out their pinball machines. With over 20 pins to choose from, there is something for everyone. Crazy since 1996. I don't just say this about every place. I love going to Crazy Martins. I've always loved going to Crazy Martins ever since I was of age to go to Crazy Martins. It's one of my favorite places in the entire world. Me and my wife go there almost every Sunday to play pinball machines. It is one of the funnest spots in Ohio you could possibly find. It is in Piqua, Ohio. Check out their website at www.crazymartins.com. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Row Show. As always, I'm your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today I have got an interesting guest on, especially for somebody like me. Ever since I was little, I've been fascinated by the art of magic and that kind of just the trickery of the mind, if you will. I can remember being real little watching David Copperfield. He would have specials on. I'm 38 years old, so this goes back to like the early 90s. But I would remember watching like David Copperfield do tricks on the TV where he would have you follow his finger and stuff like that. And it's always intrigued me, but it's also always been stuff that I've never wanted to know the tricks to, because I love the mysticism behind it, and again, the sleight of hand when it comes to magic and all that kind of things. And I like being one of those few things that in life that I don't want to figure out. So when I came to the opportunity to talk to my guest today, I jumped all over it. Really happy we were able to get this done. He is magician / mentalist Jackson Ridd. My friend, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I can't complain too much, my man. It's fall time finally, and I'm a fan of the summer. So for me, it's like slightly depressing, but hey, we get football as well, so it's an even trade-off, I guess. But I want to talk a little bit about you and your background and all that kind of stuff, and kind of find out the early beginnings of you and what intrigued you into the magic genre, if you would.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that's unique about me when I compare myself to a lot of my peers is that I never got like a magic kit when I was a kid. I never I was never sort of like laid out in that sort of way for me. I was introduced to it because my dad and my mom are both very, I guess, spiritual people in a way. And so they were very interested in different sort of ritual when I was a kid. And I'm sure a lot of people know about this, but the idea of like a pendulum ritual, for example, right? The idea of a pendulum to as a way of like testing your own subconscious. It's a legitimate thing. You can look this up. It's called the ideomotor response. Your brain basically sends signals to something subtly without even consciously realizing it. So it's the same way a Ouija board works, essentially. You're doing subconscious motor responses through your fingers, and it's essentially telling you your inner thoughts. And my dad laid that out to me when I was like 10 years old, which blew my mind. And I was doing this, and as I was doing it, I was thinking, how is this working? Is that like that feeling? It was so mysterious, and it was also honest. It was real. And that's what I try to do a lot with my work is I try to touch on something that's real, but feels like it's impossible, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So on that same token, because I kind of, my mom was super religious when I was younger. Things like magic were a big no-no. Was that kind of a challenge for you growing up in that kind of environment as well?
Not really. I mean, my dad was a music producer. He was very much, in the world of the arts and everything like that. And my mom was very much just on board with him. My mom is a Chinese, very traditional in some sense, that classic Asian mom, but also she had, she was like, when I dropped out of college, she was like, you got to go back. You got to get, all right. You get to have this one very typical stereotype here, but yeah, They were both very supportive, which I was honestly surprised by. Like when I was a teenager, when I had sort of got introduced to it again in a more formal capacity by like card tricks and stuff like that. I remember a friend of mine showed me something at school. We're about, I don't know, 15, 16, something like that. Showed me a card trick, blew my mind. And then from there, my mom was working at JPL at the time, and there was another guy at the company who was a magician, and he would always like he was on the testing team or something, and every time he did a presentation, he would always do a little coin trick or card trick or something like that. His name is Steve Silverman, and he was my ended up being my very first mentor in magic. My mom uh, connect me with him over lunch. I'm a teenager, and I'm talking about how much I love this. And he was like, there's a program for kids in Hollywood that if you want help, I can help you audition for it. I think it'd be good for you. And there was the Magic Castle of Hollywood. They have a kids program basically for members that are under 21. I joined that when I was 16. Um, and that really kicked it off for me because then as soon as you're around like kids your age, they're doing the exact same stuff as you, thinking the same way. It just took off from there. That was a big tangent from the question, but
No, no, it's fine. Hey, anybody that has been on this show longer than 5 seconds or watched any of this show knows we go into the weeds constantly. So that is
okay.
absolutely fine. So when you started doing magic, and we'll get into the whole mentalist thing here as well, because that's something
Yeah.
that I am interested in as well. But to start off with the magic thing, when you started getting into that, was there any real aspect of it as you were learning that you thought was a little bit more difficult than you thought it would be, or did you kind of take to it naturally? Because I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like this is something that you have to almost be a natural at it. Or am I wrong? Is it something that you can learn?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it depends on where you're drawing the line of what magic is. Even just
Okay,
when you take, let's say, a card trick, for example, right? Is the trick being able to do breaking it down here. I think magic is part science and part art. Like there are
okay,
some things that are so technical that it's very scientific, right? If you go in front of a mirror, can you make it look like the card is gone? Can you make it look like it vanishes or changes or whatever you have, right? Can you accomplish the scientific part of the trick? The artistic side of it is, can you make this entertaining and engage with your audience, right? Because you
yeah,
can end up with people that are really good practitioners. They can do the thing, but they can't even engage with someone. They can't figure out how to remember someone's name or be engaging with someone, walk up to someone, make an approach. So like there's two sides of it. So the wildest thing about magic specifically was that when I was a kid, I would look at some things that I can do now, no problem. But at the time when I was first trying them, it sounded like this is never going to happen. Like it's
sure,
never going to be possible.
yeah,
One of the simplest things that's very, very open is the idea of there's this shuffle called the Pharaoh shuffle. Basically, it's where you take two, you can feel it out and you're like, all right, this is 52 cards. I'm going to pick up exactly 26. I'm going to put them into this hand. And then I'm going to sort of like just kind of rub the sides together. And then they're just going to perfectly interweave one to one, which when I was a kid and you try that for the first time, if you try to split a deck in half, one, you can't because you're like, what does that feel like? Right.
right,
Like the sushi master with the grains of rice, being able to pick up the exact feeling of like, oh, this is going to be the perfect nigiri. Right. But when, that was something that was crazy to me as a kid. And then now you can just bust it out, right? Because the feeling is
right.
there, the repetition is there. I think that all of it is a matter of repetition and being able to feel it out. And the difference is how quickly you get there. I think there is a difference. Some people can get to it super quick. Some people it takes a little bit longer. But I think that if you spend enough time, you could all get to the same place, you know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's fair. So was there anybody when you started practicing, was there anybody that you looked up to in particular that you almost wanted to model yourself as or after at the
Oh,
beginning? Or was there any
yeah.
specific magicians that you watched or a mentalist in particular that you were like, man, I really would like to do what they're doing? Or did you just from the get just be like, I want to do my own thing?
100%. I mean, everyone at that time when I was doing it, when I started it, uh, David Blaine was huge. I think he
Okay.
was the guy, right? Like his specials had been out for a couple years, I think, at that point. Um, and it was all on YouTube. You're watching clips of things. Like people would show little magic routines on mats in their home, and they'd get uploaded somewhere, and it just would blow up because there was so little of it, right? But it was all in that card trick, close up, sleight of hand world where you're watching Blaine and he's doing a card thing. It was very much focused on this close up sleight of hand. Whereas I think a bit before, I mean, you mentioned Copperfield before when we were chatting.
Mm-hmm.
That was much more of a draw to large illusion or spectacle in this bigger way, right? Whereas, I mean, Blaine is responsible for the
Oh yeah.
current state of magic, in my opinion. Like he's influenced it so much.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, of course him for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. He was one of the few, because again, going back to early '90s, it was something that you saw on TV with Copperfield, like we talked about. But when David Blaine started doing the street magic and all that stuff, I remember you're absolutely right. It exploded, and that's around the same time where I started to get introduced to guys like Chris Angel. And I've heard names like Penn and Teller for years, but never really got into it. But you're absolutely right, and I think maybe that's overlooked. Everybody was talking about what David Blaine was doing. I mean, everyone,
Yeah,
school, people. My mom would come home from work and that talk about, did you see what this guy did? And some of the tricks that he would do. And then guys like Chris Angel would take it to the next level. It was more of a shock factor, which that's something I kind of wanted to ask you about within the industry. Are certain magicians looked at as, because okay, you go to comedy, there's
yeah.
certain types of comedy that's called hack comedy, where you've got your garbage kind of jokes that everybody looks at and is like, yeah, whatever, everybody could tell that joke. Are certain magicians looked at, I guess, almost lesser? Because to me, when I see guys like Chris Angel who do the things where they cut open their arm and a card pops out, to me that's more shock value a little bit more than magic itself. But
Right.
that's just my opinion of it. Is there certain, like, does the industry look at certain guys a certain way or not so much?
Yeah, totally. Every magician has an opinion, for sure.
Okay. Fair enough.
They're very, very opinionated. The thing is, I mean, like, man, there's levels. I would argue, I mean, how do I even explain this? Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of that. It's everywhere.
Okay.
It's down to all of the big stars and the names that you know, down to the people that fewer people might know but are still kind of a name, down to people that are just like your friends. Like everyone kind of gets a reputation, and magicians are very aware of that. Maybe because like you're sort of trained when you do magic to be very aware of people around you, and
Sure.
aware of personalities in there. It's also kind of it's still a secretive art for all intents and purposes. So there's lots of levels of like sharing and like, oh, well, I know this, but they don't know that, but I don't think they're going to do that well. So I'm not going to share it with them, or like they're just starting, so I can't tell them this or whatever. Right. There's a lot of that, which I think relates to the other thing, because it's you're identifying a value to a person and being like, okay, are they worthy of this thing? That happens so much. Um, yeah, but it's very interesting. I think every magician ends up being popular for their own brands. So I mean, like, I would argue that there are certainly some people who look at Chris Angel a certain way, but I mean, like, we know his name, and he, has puts on incredible sort of spectacle shows, and I think it's success, man. I mean, like, either way you put it, it's what people want, and it's fun and it's entertaining, and he's created a brand for himself. I don't know,
Yeah.
I can't really knock it too much.
Yeah, sure. And that's a great attitude to have, and especially when it comes to certain guys like Chris, because again, I myself get squeamish when I look at some of the stuff that he does, but that's me. But at the same time, it's kind of like, man, at least he's being, I guess, for lack of better words, original, with some of his stuff, because a lot of the stuff that he does, you
Yeah.
don't really see everyone else doing. And going back to the fact that I don't like knowing the tricks, I know back when there was a famous show for those who don't know or don't remember, where it was called Magic's Biggest Secrets Revealed,
I remember
and
that with the guy with the mask.
I, the guy with the mask music, mask magician, yeah, for sure. And we would watch it every single week. We being me and my sisters, we would watch it every single time that was on
Yeah,
because we felt like, this is so cool, being able to see how it's done. And then when it was over, it was like, okay, I can never watch somebody get sawed in half ever again, or I can never watch, just the simplest stuff. It totally ruined it. So when you have guys like Chris Angel coming along and they push the envelope, from an outsider perspective, it feels like it doesn't do anything but push that brand even further. So that's a really good point about what he does and all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah.
When it comes to the mentalist aspect of what you do, I think when people hear the word mentalist anymore, they think of that TV show that was on forever of somebody, who was a detective or whatever. Go
Yeah.
ahead and break down for people who don't know what exactly a mentalist is and what it is that you do with that art form.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people use these words interchangeably to describe me, like mentalist, mind reader. People use the word psychic, which I wouldn't say is accurate, but it gets across the same notion of like, I'm trying to get in your head. I'm trying to deal with your thoughts. I'm trying to deal with your behavior, not necessarily like watch this thing. This thing is going to do something magical. Like we are going to do something magical.
Mm.
You are going to do something weird here. We're both going to engage in something where things have serendipity, synchronicity, or I'm seeing something or learning something about you that there's no way I should be able to tell. That's sort of the premise behind a lot of the stuff that I'm doing currently on stage and just in my work. It's all based around, it's highly interactive. Nothing that I'm doing is just me to music, silent. You're not just watching, you're always engaging. It,
Okay.
to me, like you must engage to experience at least my definition of mentalism or mental magic in that way.
Okay. So would it be something similar in the lines of hypnotism as well?
Uh, it would be close. I think hypnotism is probably more defined by having people, like, I don't know, how would you say it? Like do things against their will or do things with
Mm.
their body or their mind by themselves. Like you're sort of affecting them in a way. Like, okay, you're going to sleep now, or uh, you're going to think you're a chicken or whatever you want to have. Right. I think
Yeah.
that it goes into the realm of like, we're all now watching this person in the audience because they're doing something weird. Right. And they're kind
Yeah.
of the focal point. Whereas, with me, it's always a dialogue. So I think less that I might put people into states that are similar, but it's never about, okay, we're all just going to watch this person do something strange.
Sure.
It's always a dialogue for me. But there is a connection for sure.
Okay. Okay, that's fair enough. So when you got done with your training and all that kind of stuff, when you got done out of the school that you went to, um, how did you eventually start the road to performing live? Because like I in my head, and correct me if I'm wrong, in my head it feels very similar to how you would do it in music, where you go, okay, whatever place I can perform at is where I'm going to perform at. Dive bar, street,
Yeah.
wherever I can get a spot. Is that kind of how you first started really, revving the engines as far as starting your career went, or how did that come about?
The Well, they kind of put you through a little bit of training wheels in the program for the kids at the castle. Basically, they have these certain days where you can perform because it's open to like families in the morning for like a brunch, for example. And they would always
Mm.
hire out some of the kids from the program to work those morning brunches. And so you first start to get the idea of like how to perform there. They'll throw you like a few private things because there's a lot of the sector of magic that is in the private sector. There's a lot of people that are highly successful, really successful at this, and you've never even heard their name. You probably never will because they're only working corporate events, private parties.
Oh
You know,
wow.
people that are also really good, but they just, for whatever reason, like honestly, there's a lot of money in it, so that's where a lot of people trend.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean, venues are another thing. So basically, with me, after I got out of that, went to college, did a few things with like the college theater department. came back to LA for a second, and that's when I really decided I want to put together like an hour. Like I want to put together my own full length show. And there's a few like theater festivals that I got involved with. The Fringe Festival being one of them. It's sort of this worldwide thing where you can put up your own show and stage your work, and they allow you to. They sort of give you access and help you along that way. So I did that, and that was my first big thing. And I took that to a few cities. The show was successful in the sense that I did it. I put together an hour and I finally put myself out there like that. And then from there, man, what was it? I went back to college after that, had a very tenuous relationship between coming back and helping my folks and then going back to college, finishing school. Finally, when I was in college, I was in New York. And yeah, I mean, there's another element of magicians where you can do like close-up magic or strolling magic. You can sort of make a venue out of nothing,
Mm.
where it's sort of like tableside stuff, right? And that's also really a really popular thing, because you can kind of just cold approach restaurants and you get really used to pitching yourself and trying to sell someone on this idea of like, hey, you're going to give me money for something you didn't have before and you probably don't need, but like, wouldn't this be fun? Like, don't you like magic? You show them a few tricks and like, yeah, it seems good. Let's do it. You get a lot of no's, but you get some yeses, and you end up having some sort of like a close-up thing at a place. And I did that at a few dive bars in New York. Really learned a lot, honestly. It's highly recommended. It's so much fun. It's such a weird thing to do, just walking up to strangers basically and being like, "You weren't expecting this, but we're gonna do some magic right now." It's total. It's I love it. And then yeah, I mean, you can pitch theaters on just trying to either do a special show with you to have you as like a resident. Venues if they're open and available at wherever you are. Like there's some in LA, there's a few in New York. There's a venue out here in Nashville. That's why I'm here, House of Cards. But yeah, you can just sort of pitch your thing around, and hopefully the booker likes you and get hired from there. And uh, yeah, it's a balance of all those things, right? Just multiple spinning plates, close up here, doing some venues here, private work, holidays, it's a lot of private work. You try to reserve a little bit of time for getting hired out for someone's corporate event, like their holiday party or
Yeah.
someone's milestone birthday, things like that.
Yeah. It's funny when you said, well, I guess I should back up here. Have you done a corporate event before?
Yeah, a few.
Okay. So when I hear comedians talk about doing corporate events, they always talk about how much they don't like doing them because it doesn't feel like people there really care a whole lot that there's a comedian on stage. One would might think though that when it comes to magic, it's completely different. Do you find that corporate events, people pay more attention to the magicians more than they would regular acts like a band or a comedian or something like that? Because it seems like the only way it works is if people obviously are engaged. And not only that, magicians seem to get people's attention more easily. Honestly, does that sound about right, or is it about the same route as it comes to comedians, or is it all situational?
Yeah, I've never thought about that. I mean, I know. So the biggest gripe that magicians ever give about corporate stuff is that you have to be very corporate friendly.
Mm,
That's like the biggest thing. You can't do anything that's vaguely edgy. Um, you're going to have to keep it pretty middle of the road. But if that's a lot of magician style to begin with, so
sure.
that's not a problem for a lot of folks. Uh, I will say I try to push the envelope a little bit because it's just fun for me. I like seeing where that line is, and I can usually get them onto my side. But yeah, I like it. I know a lot of people like it. That was a very interesting distinction you made about comedians and bands. It's different. I mean, like magic is highly engaging. It's psychologically
Yep.
like you must be paying attention for this to work, and so people usually do come on board. I've never had the issue of a bad audience, even if they weren't expecting anything like that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, the reason why me and you were sitting here talking today is because we have a mutual friend, and he was a recent guest on this very show. It was episode 36. His name is Dante Ruscellelli. I'm sure I'm butchering his last name, but I tried my hardest to get it. And by the way, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch that episode. It was honestly one of my favorite ones. I really enjoyed speaking with him. Very, very open and honest individual that's had years and years of experience, and he's actually been in the industry of comedy for as long as I've been alive. We talked about that in that episode. He's been in it since 1986, which was the year I was born. So that's how we know each other, because he ended up shooting my contact information over to you.
Yeah.
Um, how did you end up getting hooked up with him to the point where you guys decided to start working together and he would be an agent for you?
It was via another friend of mine who was working for Golden Artists for a bit, and then got onto Dante's radar, and he started reaching out and basically being like, "Hey, do you want to do stuff together?" Because, you know, I mean, magic to me is a uh, very sister art to comedy. Like, it's very
Absolutely. Yeah.
self-driven. It's
Right.
usually just you. There's a lot of gigging and traveling. They're very similar art forms, um, uh, despite being distinct, but they're very similar in the grand scheme of entertainment. So
Yeah.
yeah, we just started talking about that, and he's a very helpful dude, and that's pretty much it. Honestly, just he's been helpful in trying to set up connections and make things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. Like I said, I really enjoyed talking to him, and we got off our interview and probably talked to her about 15 minutes later. And it's always nice to pick the brain of somebody, like you said, sister adjacent when it comes to
Yeah.
entertainment, because a lot of these arts are very similar. Comedy to magic to even as something as simple as professional wrestling, because there's a slight of, art, all these things. There's little connectors to all of it. Even when it comes to music, performance, it's all performance art. So yeah, being able to sit down and have these conversations with people like this is one of the favorite things I love about doing this show, because it's it's all entertainment, like you said. At the end of the day, it's all entertainment. So, and it's all connected to a certain degree. So when you started getting out there and hitting the road and doing some of these shows, and was there anything in particular, any one show, it could be good or bad, whatever. Was there any show in particular that you've done in your time of doing this and being on the road that sticks in your mind more than others? Again, could be something, a positive experience, could be a funny story where you flopped something, whatever it might be. Is there anything when you think of your time that pops out more than the rest?
The thing that keeps coming to my mind is it's venue specific. I find so much of magic to be
Okay.
venue specific, because it's all about putting people into the right mindset, right?
Sure.
And the place that stuck out to me is the Chicago Magic Lounge. And personally, I've said this to everyone I know. I'll say it here. I think it's the best place that if you want to watch magic as like a customer, it's the best place to go. Period. You're getting the best experience there. It uh, for one, it's the only place that I'm aware of that was built literally from the ground up as a venue for
Mm,
specifically magic. Like, there's nothing else. It's just that it's called the Chicago Magic Lounge. They don't do anything else. Um, and the way it's set up is just lovely. Like, the way it guides you through the whole experience um, is very detail oriented, and like, it's clear that they care about your individual experience, every single person that walks through. They also care a lot about the performers, which is uh, not always, it's not something to take for granted. They'll set you up with a lot of things. Everything's very, very organized. Uh, Everything down to like, they got your flight itinerary. They're going to pick you up immediately when you land. Like, everything is just dialed in. You're landing this time. This is going on. They will have the car arranged for you here. This is going to happen. You're going to have lunch with so and so, and then do this thing. It's just, like, it's beautiful how much effort is put into that, and the love really comes through. I think in when you're on stage and just doing your thing, like, your love for the audience comes through. So if the venue has a lot of love for you, it just creates this environment of, just to me, pure magic, like, where everything is dialed in and everyone feels really good.
yeah. Do you find that, talking about regions and stuff like that, do you find that certain crowds throughout the country, certain pockets throughout the country are harder to work than others because, again, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I feel like when it comes to something where you have to be as engaging as you are, with your art form, I feel like it would be challenging based on what part of the country you would be in. Because somebody on the East Coast, like talk about New York City, I'm pretty sure they'd be a little bit harder to impress than somebody who lives in, like, let's say, a Dayton, Ohio area where I live. Do you find that to be the case, or am I off base?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, as soon as I landed here in Nashville, I could feel the energy, just entirely different. The way people are operating, everything, everyone's behaviors. It's something that I love to pay attention to. But here specifically, yeah, I mean, coming from LA, it's a stark contrast. Out here, the vibe of people that I get is a lot more honest, a lot more open, a lot more just like willing to go along with you and being polite in general. Like the Southern
Right.
hospitality is like a real thing, right? Like just feeling open and polite. Um, the one really funny thing was I've been noticing it the last couple of times I've been walking out. Uh, you have to really like they're not applauding when I'm used to, right? Which is not to say that it's at the wrong time. It's just not when I'm expecting it. Right? I'm used to when I walk out on
Sure.
stage, it's this whole, oh yeah, oh my God, it's starting, it's here, he's going on. Here it's like some people will be there, some people will be like, all right, I want to see like him do a trick first. Maybe it's like the fact that it's a lot of bands probably just start here by playing. Like there's nothing,
Yeah, right.
you just open the thing and here they are, there they are, they're just going, right? And then you wait till the song's finished to like, oh, this is awesome, right? So there's
Right.
something about that that's different that I'm getting used to. Definitely every place has its own unique energy, honestly, down to the venue itself. Because in LA, I perform at a place called Black Rabbit Rose, and it's a very hip, little speakeasy type vibe. You can't even see what it is from the outside. That attracts a certain clientele. And the Magic Castle, which is another big venue there, attracts a very different clientele than each other. So it goes down to the venue, but regionally, I would say that tracks. That you do kind of have to adjust to where you're at and who these people really are. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I know the couple of times that I got a chance to go out to LA, which was not many, but I found out very quickly, not for me. Because what you said, it's strange. Every place I ever look forward to playing at as a musician sucks for me because, like, it was like, I don't know, people were like, we're not impressed by you. That was almost the vibe that I got in a lot of these venues. But then we go to like a Salt Lake City, Utah. The place was packed and the people were crazy. So I don't think people quite understand, like, the difference in demographic is real.
Hmm.
You're dealing with a different vibe, especially in a place like Los Angeles where, I'll never forget, we were on we were in Beverly Hills one time where I was working for this band called Twisted. And I was staying right across the street from Whiskey A Go Go in a hotel. And there's a restaurant there. It's like a cafe diner kind of restaurant. I forget the name of it, but they were explaining to me, like, all of our pop is made right here, and our beef is grass fed. I'm just like, bro, I want a burger. I don't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? I don't give a fuck what this cow's name was when you killed it. I don't care what you fed it. Like, that's just, I just want a burger, homie. So, like, that kind of shit, it's different when it comes to stuff like that. So yeah, that's something that always intrigues me, and I'm sure it's twice as difficult for people like you who have to be engaging, and be as fluid as you do when it comes to stuff like that. So, well, I guess when it comes down to it, I don't want to know, and this is something we can cut out later if we can't do it. I
Okay.
don't want to know any tricks or anything like that.
Yeah.
But is there anything you can do right here in this environment that we are in right now that your art form would appease, or is just that's not the right time for it? Because I feel like people would be interested to see if there's something you can do right here right now during this interview.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I'm not sure if this is the right choice, but
Okay.
I kind of want to try something that I've been thinking about this a little bit. It's something that everyone could do. If you're watching this, you can do this along with me. Uh, it will not. I'm going to say this up front. It will not work with everyone, but it will probably work with most people. So, Jay, you might do this. You might not. This is the thing that I was talking about before. The idea of the stuff that I'm doing can be explained. It can. There's nothing paranormal about it, but it feels strange. It feels impossible. It feels like it's something kind of otherworldly. So what we can all do is I want you to clasp your hands together like this, make a sort of interlace your fingers, really get them in there. And what we're going to do is in a moment here, I want you to feel like you can be influenced with the words that I'm saying. Okay. And you're going to feel an impulse. And as soon as you feel that impulse, I want you to follow that feeling and let the pressure of that impulse guide you. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to separate your index fingers and put them up maybe an inch apart. Okay. And as I talk, I want you to feel like there's a magnet, and you're really going to picture a magnet between your fingertips. And if you can, I want you to imagine those magnets attracting each other, and you can feel, and as your fingers start to feel attracted to each other, just let the impulse go and let it really come and bring those fingers together. Really feel that magnet. And as soon as your fingers touch, in fact, your fingers are going to feel like they're locked in. And as they stick together, you're going to feel like it's even harder to pull them apart. You can't pull them apart because there's a magnet sticking them together. You're going to really feel that impulse there. And as you do, we're going to count back from 3 to 1. And you're going to separate your hands, and you're going to be fine. 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and separate your hands. Fingers feel good, and you don't feel that impulse anymore. It's gone.
That was crazy. I literally could not, and I'm double jointed, so I can do this. I could do this. I could not. That was crazy. Wow. And I see this little stuff like that draws me to it because, like you said, there's a perfectly good explanation for it. We're not going to get into it, but the fact that that's what I love the most about this kind of stuff is
Yeah.
there's always a trick to it, but I don't want to know what it is. That's fine
Yeah.
too. But yeah, that was crazy. Again,
Yeah.
this is my normal fingers right here. I could do that. I couldn't do that when I was sitting here like that. That was crazy. That was crazy. First and foremost, I want to thank you for taking the time out to talk to me today. It's always nice to speak to somebody who is outside of the genres I am and get their insights and opinions, especially when it comes, like I said, the entertainment industry in general is something I've always been interested, even before I started doing any of it. The ins and out of it has always fascinated me. So, again, thank you for talking to me today. If you ever come to Dayton, Ohio, I will be looking for you. So don't worry about it. I will be there, and I will remind you of this. But all the luck in the world to you, my man. And as usual, I always give the last couple of minutes to my guests to plug whatever it might be: social media, website, how they can find you, how they can find your tickets, all that stuff. The floor is yours, my man.
Oh, thank you. Well, my name is Jackson Ridd. You can find me on my website, Instagram. Sign up for my mailing list if you want to see what I'm doing. Usually, a lot of the stuff that I do is in LA or New York, but occasionally, and honestly, maybe even because there's a little theater in Columbus, Ohio, so I might be out
Okay.
there at some point in time. But yeah, just it's my name, Jackson Ridd. Ridd is how you spell my last name. I'm on Instagram, all that sort of stuff. Follow me, check me out, and yeah, what am I doing? I mean, October, just yeah, mostly a lot of holiday stuff. So hey, if any of you work for a big company and want to bring some magic to whatever your holiday party is, let your booker know, let your event planner know, whatever. But yeah, this is really fun, man. I'm glad we got to cover the topics we did, and I had a blast. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Jackson, appreciate you, man.